started recording. Oh. All right, and we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our session. My name is Molly Vorwerck, and I am the head of content at Monte Carlo, the data observability company. Monte Carlo is the creator of the data observability category and the world's first end-to-end data observability platform. Data observability is basically a solution to help you trust your data across your entire data ecosystem. So, without further ado, I'm very excited to today host Alex T, Vice President of Data Services at Fox, about how best-in-class data teams can build an agile data strategy and in turn increase trust and reliability in their data. Alex is one of the coolest data leaders I know and has awesome experience building and scaling data platforms at companies like Everbridge, Green Dot, and now Fox Networks Group, the operating unit of 21st Century Fox, which includes Fox Television, Fox Sports, Fox Cable Networks, and other entities. At Fox, Alex leads the analytics and data engineering team, with a key focus on ensuring that their data operations are scalable, impactful, and mapped to key business initiatives and KPIs. A very challenging but rewarding process, which we'll dive into a bit later. So in short, Alex is responsible for making data at Fox work, which is, as we'll learn, an extremely insights-driven company that abides by the rule, you can't manage what you don't measure. And Fox measures everything. So with that, I will pass it over to my colleague, Scott, our head of partnerships, to introduce himself.
Yeah, thanks, Molly, and great to be here today. Like Molly said, I lead partnerships over here at Monte Carlo. And so I've been working with Alex actually for quite a long time now, going back to my previous company Segment, where I helped Fox bring on that platform as their kind of customer data collection mechanism. So yeah, really excited to have this conversation and for all of you to learn about Alex and Fox's awesome data journey over the past couple of years. It's really exciting. All right, Alex, you want to introduce yourself?
Hey, thank you for being so kind, Molly. This is a great introduction. I appreciate that. I'm hoping to live up to the expectations of the way you're describing. So a little story about myself. I was born and raised in a small country in Eastern Europe called Moldova, and graduated in Moldova with a degree in computer science and math. And in 2006, I immigrated to the United States. So had quite an interesting journey in IT, and I fell in love with data quite early in the journey because I felt the power of data. I felt how data can be everything. It's like a water. It takes the shape of the vessel, and it's very insightful, right? So my journey was amplified in my previous company before Fox, which was Green Dot, when I was doing financial investigations and looking at fraud, and then building the first of a kind data warehouse team, cloud-based, which was the unique for that company at the time back in 2012, 2013. Moving into Fox in 2017, I was the first person, one of the first few people on the digital team at the time. That's when the digital products were growing at Fox, and we were doing a lot of streaming services and capturing the audience. This is a predating of the Disney transaction with Fox. So I'm lucky in the sense I lived in the old Fox, I lived through the Disney transaction, and now I'm enjoying all the benefits of the new Fox as well. Going from 2017 to now, essentially a little bit over 4 years, I have 4 teams under my wings. So the teams are responsible for data engineering on the Fox Digital side, for data analytics, the data science, and then we have a chapter for data architecture. So I strongly believe in the fact that you have to engage the team in decision-making process and have that collaboration approach within a team. Hence, we don't have a person leading the architecture. It's basically a team chapter approach. And what we're responsible for, guys, we're responsible for all of our ingestion across all of our sources, first-party sources, third-party sources. We're responsible for data optimization. We're responsible for building transformations and aggregations and creating data modeling. We're responsible for actually data activation. So activation of the data is one of the very important keys of how do you actually make sense of the data? How do you sell the data? How do you power your business decisions with the data? How do you ensure that business can grow based upon the feedback and based upon the discoveries that you have with the data? because a lot of companies sitting on this wealth, which is data, but not every company is leveraging that the way they're supposed to.
Great. That's awesome. Sounds like you are responsible for a lot, and it seems like a very demanding but rewarding and exciting job.
It can be both, quite frankly, yes.
Yeah, some of that's when the best jobs are made. So we've talked about this a bit before, and Fox is known as a company that's extremely data driven. I mean, you can even tell watching Fox Sports, like the backgrounds on the screens and tracking all of the stats and all that stuff, and then down to, the way that the company measures success. How does your team, the data team and the data org, how does your success map to Fox's company's KPIs?
It's going to be probably surprising for some people, but Fox is very much technology company, not just a media company. And I've heard a lot of the feedback in the past as we were hiring people. People will say, oh, I don't want to go and work for a media company because you guys don't really do technology. That's not true. We have some really cutting edge things that we're deploying in Fox that, quite frankly, I have never had done in my previous life, nor anybody on my team has done in the previous life. And we can get a little bit deeper into as we progress with the session. But we have a lot of really interesting technology that we're building. Our tech stack is very powerful. We are full cloud-based. We're fully on AWS. And then we have very deep partnership with companies like AWS and Segment and now Monte Carlo going forward. And then we can reach even early pre-beta, pre-alpha versions of the new software and new technologies and stacks, so we can deploy and we can leverage and then build our frameworks and our data applications based on that so that we can benefit the company. How is different our KPIs versus other companies? They're not that much different, right? If you think about medium and large, especially media companies, they have very many problems that they're the same. How to unify and how to make data more democratization across the board. How to leverage first-party data, how to collect that data and make it safe and secure, and how to activate this, how to expand our insights in timely fashion and drive that to the end user customers so they can make proper decisions, how to deliver personalization and experimentation at a unique level to the end consumers, right? How to accelerate the new onboarding of our business. So these are the very high-level KPIs that data teams are striving towards, partnering between us on the digital side, working with our linear partners on the data on the linear side. We are working very closely together to build this unified democratization layer that allows us to share data across the Fox. Hasn't been done before, and there are many reasons for that, right? The company wasn't ready, but right now I'm very happy to say that leadership in Fox is very young and very data-driven, and a lot of the decisions are being made by using data first, not as a post-factum, which is often happened in the different companies than previously as well. So right now, we almost like drinking from the fire hose, that every single little decision needs a lot of data to support the decision, right? And it's a great thing, because honestly, what can be worse is not having your product being leveraged, not having your product being used. So we're trying to normalize and structure and define the data and bring it over to the all kinds of users, internal and external, so then we can power the decisions of those users to make the business grow forward. In regards to the KPIs, what we try to do from my personal level, I'm a very big believer in people. And I feel that if you try to make people happy, people, when they're happy, they tend to deliver tremendously good results, right? So when you try to instill a culture of respect, when you try to instill the culture of collaboration, culture where people feel like they belong, they tend to create some really amazing products. And all of that only helps to grow the company, grow the stack, ensure the KPIs and OKRs are being achieved, and more and beyond. So the power of the company is, in essence, the data, but people are the power of that data. People would make that data available. And that's how we're trying to build the teams and structure the teams and ensure that there is full collaboration, and then the team is delivering successful results based upon the value that they bring to the company.
Right. No, that makes 100%. To spin off of that a little bit, how do you get people bought into using data in a kind of in a cohesive way like this? How do you prevent data silos from forming?
It's very difficult to prevent data silos. So there's a little thing I used to say, which I like. It's called controlled freedom. So I think one of the things that helps us, and we're not there yet, we still have a long journey to get to where we need to go, is to create this control freedom where you're defining few standards that are adhered by and supported by key data teams. But then you allow the consumers, which are internal stakeholders at this point, to build whatever they need to build internally. If we think about centralization of the reporting structure, where you used to come in, open the ticket, and wait for a turn to get an answer, by the time you're going to get your answer, it's going to be too late. Businesses are evolving and growing at pace and speed I have never seen before. So decisions are being made at blazing speeds right now, and you have to have something at your fingertips right now, and you cannot wait even a day or even a few hours. So thriving and striving towards giving people a trust in the data platforms, but then supplying them with tools and skill sets so they can be self-sufficient, I think this is the way to go going forward. And by virtue of doing so, you eliminating the biggest silo, which is the single source of truth. Once you're establishing this foundation where you're controlling the way data gets ingested and the way data gets exposed, the data usage becomes a little bit less problematic from the silo standpoint, because now you know that core is secure, core is fundamental, it's being wrapped with all the tooling like Monte Carlos and maybe custom frameworks, etc. So you're ensuring the data is flowing in the way it's supposed to. And that different teams start building different insights and actions based upon that data and based upon what they need. We cannot possibly have a one single entity that supplies all of the demands, because just like Molly and Scott are two different people, you have different needs and different interests. So we need to build a system that allows you to be self-sufficient. That's one of the areas we're trying to work towards, to eliminate the silos. But it's still going to be a bit of a carrot and a stick, right? You still have to enforce certain rules of engagement of how people need to trust the data and make sure that they don't go rogue and creating some black pipes that then we have to support and maintain, but try to give them a little bit of freedom within their pool of data that we're exposing them to.
Right, absolutely. And that actually is a great segue into my next question for you is your data stack, Fox's data stack. And I'm going to share my screen here because it's actually, it's quite a beautiful stack. I'm very impressed.
Thank you.
Let me see here. All right. Here we go. Tell us a little bit about our stack, or Fox's stack. How did you build it?
First and foremost, in order for you to be successful in delivering what sort of underlying architecture you need to have, you need to understand the business a tiny bit, right? And there's another thing that I am a strong believer: don't chase the latest and greatest technology, because if you're going to continuously to do so, you will never stop and you will always going to induce change. And it's not always necessary. Sometimes the stack that you have right now, it's good enough. All you have to do is just make it more optimized and make it more powerful to deliver what you need. So instead of chasing some high goals, try to evaluate what the problem you have at hand right now before you're going to build the stack. We embarked on a journey of adopting lakehouse architecture, which gives us a little bit of both. Gives us a beauty and control of the data lake, as well as the cleanness and structure of the data warehouse. We needed that because of the previous point I was making earlier, that controlled freedom approach where you're building self-serving analytics have to start in this middle center we call optimized layer. So this visual that you have right now can be read from left to right or right to left or bottom up or up down, doesn't matter. It's a matrix of how the data flows in Fox Digital. And we have different data types. We have standard good old batch with structured and unstructured data. We have streaming data. We have micro batch, which we're partnering very closely with our friends at Segment. We have some data APIs. So this view represents how data gets ingested on a high level without sharing a lot of the secret sauces, so to speak, of what we do and how we do it. And then data goes through, we're calling it 3-layer cake. First of all, we have the data exposed at its raw, exactly how we ingest the data, that's data gets stored. But then the raw data is often not user-friendly, and it's not usable for people who want to do discovery and who want to do some sort of exploration. That's why we're building optimized layer. Optimized layer comes with no or very little layer aggregations, where data gets sharded, data gets sliced and diced, data gets optimized in the different file formats for the speed of read and write and usability. And then after that, whatever we know that something needs to be defined as a data model, or it's a structured data, or let's say curated data set, we engaging that within the publishing layer, and then we're building it for a more broader consumption within the company. And inside of the published data set, data can be exposed via our tool stack, which consists of Redshift and S3 and Athena and RDS and Aurora and DynamoDB. Like I said, we're a full AWS shop. We have a lot of technology from AWS. Some of the technology that we are embarking on right now are brand new. We have never had this before, and we're very excited to building it, such as we're using Neptune, AWS Neptune, for our graph databases, where we're going to be building deterministic or probabilistic approaches of matching first-party data and identities and a bunch of other data sources that are unrelated to create the identity graph and knowledge graph and other things. We're using AWS Personalize for optimization within our recommendations and personalization delivery side. And then, of course, the whole data stack needs to be wrapped in the QA, validation, and alerting. Hence, you see front and center, we have Monte Carlo, we have Datadog and CloudWatch alerts and some custom frameworks that we're building. And then it needs to be governed, it needs to be secured. So we're using the Glue Catalog and Lake Formation and Data Catalog, and in the future, some data management tools that can help you to define and achieve that level of security and structure. Because if you do not approach your data from the angle that it's easy to discover, it's easy to search, it's easy to observe, the data becomes more like a data swamp, where you just have a bunch of data dumped into a location and it's almost impossible to make sense of where that is. This is where some of the formats and some of the strict regulations that we need to instill and enforce by making sure the data is getting properly indexed, properly stored, and then otherwise people will not be able to make sense of the data and find it. On the right-hand side, you see our data usage and data integrations. We're making a big effort in our activations, personas, and our campaigns, leveraging our partners from the DMPs of the world, the CDPs, building identity graph. We contemplating consent management, having delivery mechanism via email, push, in-app, etc. Partnering with our MVPDs and our affiliates and our current and future acquisitions. So this view basically represents our lakehouse architecture, where you can see how data gets mingled and wrangled and absorbed. And in some cases, the publishers are the subscribers, and in some cases they're not. So we have a lot of hands and a lot of angles of recovering of the data covering within Fox. There's a lot of sources that we're dealing with as well.
Yeah, I can imagine. No, this was wonderful. Thank you for sharing this with us, and
Sure.
pass it over to Scott.
Yeah, and now that we have kind of the lay of the land at Fox, kind of what technology and how it's architected and all that fun stuff. Curious to learn a little bit more about kind of the like people and process involved in actually building out this self-service analytics platform. And specifically, would love to hear you talk a little bit about, because I've had the pleasure of working with both of them, the relationship between your data engineering team and teams and your analytics team, where we're actually kind of building those last mile pipelines and
Sure.
reporting and visualizations.
So many years ago, thank you for the question. Many years ago, when we were defining the data warehouse structure back in Green Dot, there was a lot of thoughts and the different school of thoughts of how the engineers and analysts should partner up and work together. And we agreed within the team that each person should be strong and continue to do what they actually have a good strong suit of doing. So engineers should continue on engineering and analysts should continue on analytics. And by virtue of doing that, we have separated roles where our analysts are defining the spec. We're calling it an STM, it's source to target mapping spec, that allows our engineers to operate almost as if it's a playbook. So the analysts are sitting closer to the business, they're understanding business pain points, they are partnering with business of seeing what items that you need to build, where to go to get the data, and they interrogate the sources as the sources get ingested, and then the outcome of that becomes this source to target mapping that allows the developers to build according to the specification the best possible engineering piece that they can. Right, and by virtue of doing so, they almost like tie to the hip. It's basically a continuation of the flow of the work, and it allows people to focus on their specific areas instead of being spread thin. Because, quite frankly, some people may disagree with me, but having developers attending a lot of business meetings probably can be a waste of their time, because business sometimes tends to go in circles, right? And you need to have specific, ability to wrangle that. But by instilling the analytical area before that helps us to bridge that gap excuse me, and then allow developers to do what they need to do best.
Yeah, no, that's great. And it's been amazing to watch this in action. I can personally attest for everything that he just said. One funny thing, and that's been made very clear over the course of our engagement over the first couple of months here, is that every time I try to get breakout sessions with like the quote unquote data producers, the data engineers versus the data consumers, those analysts and data scientists and stuff, everybody's like, no, we meet together. We're doing this all as one, which is super impressive. And I haven't seen any companies pull that off without a lot of bickering and arguments in those sessions. So it's really impressive team that you've built there.
And Scott, and this is the point I was making earlier. It's all about collaboration, right? We're not enforcing rules of engagement. This is not a playbook that you must achieve and you must follow by the book, right? It's all part of the discussion. So we've worked together for years between the two different chapters of the team, and I know exactly where things start and where things end. So right now it becomes natural. But for anybody else who wants to try that, feel free to reach out if you have any questions. I can give you more heads up on that. But when you make people values visible, and when you make people feel like they belong and they have a point, everything is questionable. So they can ask whatever questions they want, right? And we can argue, we can discuss, and that's where the truth gets born, right, in the conversations. And then we always like to express and prove the point of why we're doing these things the way we're doing it right now and not the other way around. Unless someone comes in and changes our opinion and shows us a better way, we feel this is really good right now, and the teams and the leads of the teams have been happy doing so. More so, Scott, this plays really well right now as Fox Digital is going through this transformation where we're adopting the scaled agile framework delivery process, which is called SAFe. And as we're defining these agile release trains or value streams, we now have exactly the position that we need to fulfill for each specific agile release train, which is like a value stream. Understanding, do we place a developer on that team? Do we place an analyst? Do we place a data scientist? Do we place a MarTech analyst? Because every one of them has a very distinct roles and responsibilities. And it's all natural, and it just works well together within the structure of the data team.
Yeah, that's awesome. Really good stuff. To zoom us out a little bit now, we just went very, very tactical and appreciate it. I think everybody in the audience will appreciate that level of detail too. But kind of a higher level question here, like how do we actually achieve data democratization at companies like Fox? Is it possible? How close are you to actually achieving it?
So I think it's possible. Otherwise, I would not be trying to do so. I'm still maybe a romantic, a hopeless romantic, but I think it's possible. B, you have to have a buy-in. And I think we here in Fox, we do have a buy-in from our top leadership down. Like I mentioned earlier, they are very data-driven. Of course, there's a ton of challenges, right? There's a ton of problems and hoops and hurdles you have to overcome. But once you have the top-level buy-in, all you have to do, you have to make this as a slow motion, and you have to make it as a necessity. In a sense, whenever Molly, as a new person, gets onboarded within a company at whatever capacity she gets onboarded, and she gets fully trained on where the data is, how to find the data, how to discover the data sources, what should you trust, what should you not trust, it becomes almost as if like a second part of the nature. So a little bit after that, Molly will not be able to do her work without actually referring to the data. Try to eliminate the silos, such as tribal knowledge, right? Which people, hey, for 17 types of questions, you have to go and see Scott because he's the only one who knows that stuff. Oh, he's on vacation right now, so guess what? Nobody can answer this. This is one of the biggest problems as well. We need to find a way to document this. We need to find a way to automate this. We need to find a way to publicize this knowledge. And it shouldn't come at the fear of we are replacing Scott. That's completely quite the opposite. Is we're now going to have Scott doing something entirely else than being this Wikipedia of knowledge for tribal historical patterns of what has happened 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago. And it all comes with trust. The moment you drop transparency, the moment you start hiding things, the moment you break stuff and you start finding the way out, people lose trust. And it's really hard to regain trust back. So no matter what happens, I've learned myself, if you're being honest and if you're describing the problem, people tend to understand and they tend to agree and they tend to give you another break to fix the problem and come back because you own the issue or you own the problem. When you're building this with full trust and transparency, you have a very big ratio of success achieving where you need to go. You just have to be very careful not too many changes at once, and then tackle an angle and make sure that angle is really good before you're going to tackle something else. Instead of doing 10 different things, 10% each, do one or two and make sure it's 70+% completion.
Absolutely. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And so in all of this, and given your incredibly, pretty clean, but still complex data architecture, and given kind of the high scale and velocity of data at Fox, what's the role of data observability in enabling this data democratization?
Data observability right now becomes more of a necessity. It's not a luxury anymore for us. As the business has become more and more data driven, nothing is worse than allowing top-level executives making a decision based upon the data that you don't have trust in. That has tremendous amount of cost and repercussions, something that I can't even size. I tend to give no data versus bad data knowingly, because that saves us from so many troubles in the future. And for us to make sure that we have the trust in data, we have the data timeliness, the data completeness, the data cleanliness, the data standards, and everything around that applied and monitored day by day, tools like Monte Carlo are basically a must for us. Hence, we have embarked on this journey within Fox and Monte Carlo a few months ago to get the tool and start embarking that tool across all the Fox's properties, because we have, if we're looking at the statistics, we're processing over 200 sources that are coming to us on multiple times during the day. We're processing tens of billions of records per week. We're processing about 10,000 of schemas that are coming over to us, right? Scott knows a lot of these numbers very, very natively. You can't scale the team to maintain and support and validate and observe the data. You have to have a tool. Hence, something like Monte Carlo, it's a great addition to the team and to the family to allow us to build, AI-powered overview of what's happening on our data stack, from the jobs to the data completion to the freshness of the data. And then based upon that, that's how we're starting to instill the trust, because we know what's happening. We can catch the issues before they hit the production. More so, if they do hit the production, we know exactly what's the level of the impact. We can reverse engineer, we can trace it back, and we can see how many objects have been involved, and we can stop it, at least a large of that, in flight before it's going to become a massive impact downstream. So it's no longer, Scott, it's no longer a luxury. This is a mandate. Like, we need to have the QA and validation and observability framework in place, in part with what we have built in-house, because we have a few frameworks that we're using in-house. But Monte Carlo is a great addition to the family.
Awesome. Yeah, and it's been a joy to work with you all. And last question to wrap us up here on a bit more of a tactical note. We've been talking a lot about kind of decentralization. You mentioned that controlled freedom. Tell us a little bit more about that control aspect. Which things need to actually be controlled or centralized from kind of your level to make sure that this doesn't fall apart when you get it in the hands of everybody at the company?
Yeah, we're still working the details of that, but essentially the ingest, the rules, excuse me, the rules and framework of ingestion should be controlled by a standard centralized data team, right? The way security applies on the data should be controlled by the centralized team, because otherwise, if you start creating this fan-out approach, our InfoSec and privacy and legal are going to have very, very difficult times. The frameworks of publishing data to standard curated reports that are going to executives, for example, because last thing you want to do is to create two different metrics having similar name, or same metric having two different names, right? So there's a little bit of items that we can go into the details if need be, but those are the things that you need to put some rigor around, and you need to put some control. But everything else, especially within the discovery and your ad hoc analytics, it should be free, right? We give you the source of data. We guarantee the source of data is trustworthy. We know that we're watching those pipes every single day or multiple times a day. We know that the data inside can be used for X, Y, and Z. Just go ahead and use it for whichever way you want. Once you're ready for that data to take its next shape and become more of the executive level publishing layer, people come back to us, and then we help them to expose the data and make it publicized. But if something that Molly builds herself and then she wants to share with Scott, why should it be involved? My involvement in this particular case of the team just creates another layer of commotion. And then that breaks the whole paradigm of delivering to the business, right? The whole time to market piece breaks, because now there's another outlier, which is Alex and the data services team that needs to be engaged in order to do so. So the least amount of engagement we can produce, the better we will all going to be. But we have to control the main aspects of the data structures and security and safety.
For sure. Super insightful, Alex. Thank you. We're at time here. Really appreciate
Pleasure.
your time, Alex, and our host. Thank you, Data Agility Day. And thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Bye.